welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. We're coming to you from outside the White House here in Washington, D.C., just a few hours before Prime Minister Modi steps down to meet with President Donald Trump. This is going to be the first meeting of the two leaders. They have, of course, had 3 phone conversations since President Trump came into office. We're going to be starting our special coverage here on CNBC TV 18 and Network 18, so do stay tuned. We've got political experts, economic commentators, and, of course, veteran India and U.S. watchers to give us their opinion on what this meeting will mean for Indo-U.S. ties going forward. Joining us now is someone who's a very familiar face on the channel. She is part of Cartica, and of course they have assets under management of over $2.7 billion. A big India bull. We last met her here in DC when Prime Minister Modi was attending his meeting here with President Barack Obama and was welcomed here by the US IBC. Teresa Barger, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. It's good to have you back on the show.
Yeah,
so Prime Minister Modi, no stranger to DC, so familiar territory, but an unfamiliar cast of characters that he's going to have to deal with. What's your own expectation of this visit?
I think it'll all be pleasant. I don't expect anything untoward to come. I think that the issues that they are going to discuss are pretty predictable. Obviously, there's going to be defense, there's going to be terrorism. I would have loved them to talk about the H-1B visas because I think it's a win-win for America and India, but alas, I don't think they will.
So you don't believe that H-1B is going to be an issue that the Indians would like to bring up because this is the first meeting of both sides. There is an executive order that has already come in from President Trump, so perhaps the Indians, you believe, would not like to press ahead on the H-1B issue, at least in this visit.
I think that's right, and that's maybe out of politeness, but this has been a huge issue for Jeff Sessions, who is his Attorney General, and we'll see where Jeff Sessions' career goes in the Trump administration, but with Jeff Sessions there, I don't think we're going to get much.
But how big an issue is the H-1B concern? Because, Indian industry and Indian IT industry specifically has raised this several times over. But when we talk to people who've been watching this issue closely, they believe that it's perhaps been exaggerated, it's perhaps been blown out of proportion. What's your own sense?
Well, 50% of the H-1Bs are given to Indians, and most of those are to the Indian IT companies. Yes, they can work around that, but the other issue for American productivity is all of the H-1Bs that are given to Silicon Valley companies to bring in the best and the brightest engineers, computer programmers for what they need.
But
so
they
it's a bigger issue.
They can
well,
still
except that they're going to shrink the number and make it more.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to make it more expensive. So that means that if an Indian comes here for university and a master's degree, they can't get a $80,000 job with Apple or Facebook or Tesla.
It'll have to be $130,000 job.
Because they're entry level.
Yeah.
And so what are they going to go back and work to India for a few years, and then you're going to be a mismatch.
So even if the Indian administration doesn't raise this with the Trump administration, Prime Minister Modi is meeting with CEOs of Silicon Valley, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, etc. Do you believe that this is going to be a concern that Silicon Valley CEOs are going to put on the table?
Totally.
Yes?
Totally. Yes. It's a huge issue. Now, of course, they don't have the issue with Modi as much as they have it with their own government.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think it is. And I think it's the whole issue of immigration is very important for progress in America and for American GDP growth. So I see this as something that's a win-win for both countries, actually.
Okay, let's talk about the India story.
Yeah.
The markets continue to rally, record highs.
Record highs.
Domestic liquidity is taking them to these new record highs, not so much the foreign funds at this point in time. But what's your own sense about the strength of the India story? I mean, everyone's questioning valuations, but that doesn't seem to deter the flow of money.
Yeah. From my point of view, Shereen, there are two things, formalization and financialization. So on the financialization, 98% of all the money in Demon went back to banks. Then from banks, it's been going into mutual funds, pension funds, and insurance companies because of this wonderful fact in India that 30% of the population are millennials, and they control 70% of household income. And so these are now coming into savings age, and they're putting their money into these financial products. And a lot of that, again, from a Modi reform, more money going into these institutional investors is allowed to go into the stock market and the capital markets in general. So we're seeing a financialization, money out of the mattresses, out of the gold bars, and into something that's really good for the economy.
Okay, but do you think that the strength that we're seeing currently in the Indian markets, this momentum is going to continue?
You know, personally, I think we might have a little bit of a rocky time when GST starts from next month. It's not going to be perfect. The IT backbone for it, I think, is very interesting, but it's quite ambitious. And I have never seen an IT program ever, an ambitious one, that was on time and on budget.
Yeah.
So, like all of them, it's going to take some time. So I personally think we might have a rocky time this summer going into the fall. But I still believe in the long-term story from the financialization and also formalization. And that, I think, the formalization is going to be very important.
But in the short term, do you believe that the earnings hit is going to be a significant one on account of the disruption that GST may cause?
For some industries, it will. There will be winners and losers. And the question is, how much is that going to affect earnings per share growth for the whole year? There may be disruptions that are temporary. When we do our analysis, we do a 10-year discounted cash flow, right? So we're going to look at everything over a 10-year period and then discount it back.
So you continue to be as bullish as you were on
pretty
India?
Bullish on
yeah,
India.
So I was just looking at your portfolio. Top 5 holdings of Cartica in India: Page Industries, Shree Cements, Eicher Motors, TVS, and PI Industries. So you've got 2 auto companies there. Are you looking?
Two-wheelers.
Two-wheelers,
Yeah.
specifically. Yes,
Specifically.
2 auto companies and 2 two-wheeler companies specifically. But anything else that looks interesting? Anything else where we could perhaps see you put your money into?
Yes, we are also in a consumer goods company that we believe will benefit from formalization, as the unorganized sector now has trackable transactions, and these are all then taxable, and they are on very thin margins. If they have to pay tax, they can't survive. And that's terrible for those businesses, but it's great for the Achilles heel of India, which is productivity. And so if we get more productivity, as we've got someone like Page, 60% of their competitors are the unorganized sector. Those can't survive in an age of GST and actual tax collection. And so people then will be able to buy underwear that's made, first of all, well, by people who obey the environmental laws, the social laws, as well as pay taxes. And there'll be a cheap price. And this will enhance the productivity. There are other consumer goods areas that we're in. There's another portfolio company you didn't mention, which is Marico.
Yeah.
And we think that will also benefit from formalization.
And the rollout of the GST. But Teresa, you know, as you speak with foreign investors, and you continue to be bullish, and you've been a long-time India watcher, for over 2 decades you watched the India story.
True.
How confident do they continue to feel about the reform agenda? Because there are questions now, I mean, the Economist cover, for instance, on whether this reform story is more sort of tinkering on the margins, or is it really structural reforms? How are foreign investors looking at India today?
I think they were looking at Sensex at all-time highs and saying, is this just too expensive? So that's a major thing. My belief is that even though it is at all-time highs, there's still a lot more to go because of these changes. Is Modi going to have big cataclysmic changes? Well, to some degree. I mean, GST is a
very big change.
13 years in the making.
Yes.
You know, at some point it had to happen.
Yeah.
And of course, it's watered down from what one would like. Well, after 13 years, of course, it's going to be watered down. But it's a series of changes, right? It's the e-government, it's the pay commissions, it's loosening up of capital market regulations, it's the NPL situation, where finally someone is doing something about the non-performing assets.
Do you feel confident about the fact that this NPA ordinance and now the follow-through by the Reserve Bank is going to result in meaningful action?
No one ever feels totally confident, but it's a step in the right direction, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the will is there to go in the right direction.
So would that make you want to, for instance, bet on public sector banks or private sector banks?
You know, public sector is very difficult for us because we have relationships with our investee companies, and it's very hard to know with whom you would have that relationship in the public sector. But I know there has been a play on PSU banks, certainly.
But in terms of emerging markets, and you've spent 2 decades looking at emerging markets.
Find a better one. Try to find a better one than India.
So, no, India's still
India's
right
still the
up
best
there?
one.
Yeah.
It's still the best one because reforms are ongoing. The formalization, I think, is a huge theme that is biggest in India. And financialization is a huge theme that's biggest in India. And no other country has that combination of those three things.
Okay, so those are the two themes that you're going to be betting on.
Yes.
But, you know, specifically when we talk about geopolitical risks, and I think most companies are starting to factor in geopolitical risks as the top five risks at this point in time. When you talk to investors, what are the other risks that they're talking about when they talk specifically about India?
A lot of it's execution risk in India. I think there's great disappointment that the FDI rules were not broader than they were.
But FDI, I mean, virtually every sector has now opened up. I mean, even defense, 100% FDI
yeah,
is allowed.
defense is pretty good. I guess it's really on the retailing side.
Oh, on the retail,
yeah,
okay.
I think it's on the retailing side, which again is very unproductive in India, right? They've got low rates of productivity and the whole economy suffers. Because as we know, potential growth is based on two things: demographics. India's got that in spades, fantastic at demographics. And the other thing is productivity. And that's really where India falls down. And so the retail sector is terribly unproductive in India.
Okay, so you believe that the government should be a little more aggressive when it comes to retail FDI?
I think so.
Okay, we'll get something like that.
We will.
Right. Teresa, it's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Shereen.
Many thanks for joining us here in Washington, D.C. Again, it's great to have you back on the show.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Okay,
well,
bye-bye.
that was Teresa Barger there here from Cartica Capital. We are going to continue our live coverage here from Washington, D.C. We'll take a quick break and be right back with you.